Now we have another one coming up, birthright citizenship. It would be a disgrace. It would be a disgrace if the Supreme Court of the United States allows that to happen. Remember what I said, 20 to 25% of the people coming into our country will come in through birthright citizenship. They'll become citizens through birthright citizenship, and it'll cost us numbers that are, I don't even think they're doable. And it's all up to a couple of people, and I hope they do what's right. Birthright citizenship is a disgrace.
I mean, first of all, let's start off with the fact that the only disgrace is the man sitting in that chair right there. And second of all, his numbers, which he can't even produce numbers of what this is going to cost the United States, tells you one thing right there. He's lying. Number two, the whole 20 to 25% of births into our country are from birthright citizenship from illegals. Also, blatantly untrue. And don't worry, we actually have the facts to back it up and the numbers, which this man never seems to quite have, even though he's supposed to be the president of the United States and this genius business investor, real estate tycoon who's all about numbers, but never seems to have them. All that and more on today's episode of the Daily Rumble. Do us a huge favor, guys, as we're trying to get to 10,000 followers here on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button if you get any value out of this and you want to save America. Now let's get into some of the numbers here because this is pretty telling. We did a bunch of deep dive fact checking here to make sure that we're going to get all the right numbers. So let's get right into it. First of all, I did make this. So fact checking Donald Trump, deportations, birthright citizenship. Now, let's get into some of the most blatant numbers that he's off on, that he tends to never want to talk about. And I'm going to talk about what my theory behind this birthright citizenship push that he's doing is really all about. And yes, it has to do with money. So, deportations, let's start there. Track says total removals under Trump through November 15, 2025 was around 290,603. And earlier track work said Trump was running about 10% below Biden's record on removals rather than vastly above it. And this is still true today. Like the numbers are relatively the same as Joe Biden. So he hasn't increased. There hasn't been this biggest deportation in history that he promised to the MAGA cult out there. So just again, a little bit of fact checking here. Donald Trump not living up to what he said he was going to do because it is almost physically impossible to do what he said. And I was calling that out before he even got elected, that was complete nonsense. He would never be able to accomplish that, nor would he want to. And I'll explain that here in a minute. The birthright value, he says that it's going to cost numbers that, frankly, I don't even think we can afford it. Of course, he doesn't actually say the number. Well, the contrary is this. According to JMHS related coverage and the summary from the authors of this study, is that from 1975 calculated up to 1974, so roughly 100 years, they calculate that birthright citizenship will have added $7.7 trillion in income to the U.S. economy. So that's all the way back in 1975, a couple years before I was born, and up to the year 2074, their calculation is that added economic activity to the United States is 7.7 trillion. So not costing the United States 7.7 trillion, adding to the economy, the tax base of the United States, 7.7 trillion. So again, fact checks, facts, something that Donald Trump and MAGA don't want to live in, complete opposite from what he was saying. Trump versus Biden removals. Again, this is just another graph to show you. This one is from November 2025. Again, the one in March showed him 10% below. In November, he was slightly above Biden. But again, roughly the same amount of deportations, which is what the system was built to do. It wasn't built to get rid of all the illegals, because that cheap labor is what keeps our economy running. And so they just want to keep enough of them out to keep that scarcity as well as fear of deportation with those crossing the border illegally. Why deportations claims sound bigger? First of all, the White House today likes to use a whole bunch of different definitions of what a deportation is. So they're counting anything and everything. So, for example, if a group of illegal immigrants from, Mexico, Guatemala, whatever, they come to the southern border, but they don't actually cross the border. They get caught, turned away before they even get to the fence or the river or wherever it is. They're counting that as a deportation now. And so when you actually add up the real numbers from Joe Biden versus the changed definitions of what a deportation is under Trump, Donald Trump is lagging way behind. I would say probably about 50% of actual deportations under Trump versus under Biden. Another thing is less transparent reporting. I talked about this. Outside analysts have said that Trump era monthly deportation reporting is less comparable than older data. And this is because they don't want you to know the numbers. This is why Trump never knows numbers. He doesn't want to know the numbers because he doesn't want you to know the numbers. And then that way he can just say whatever he wants to his MAGA base and they'll just eat it up like potato chips and call it a day. Rhetoric versus stats, big headline claims can exceed what formal removals data actually show. This is from doing a bunch of data analytics that I did today to try and fact check this. And again, 7.7 trillion in income added to the economy, 3.1 workers added. This birthright citizenship is upheld by the Supreme Court. This is kind of the results. 3.1 million workers added to the labor force, 1 trillion in future children, $1 trillion. The same analyst projected about 1 trillion from future children not yet born. So again, this is children of illegals. Again, people here who are not illegal. God created all of this stuff, so I'm not even sure how you can say a person is illegal on God's created earth. Like, what, did white people create this earth? No, we didn't. What happens if birthright citizenship is restricted? Here's a very basic analysis of it. The unauthorized population would grow by estimated 2.7 million over 20 years and 5.4 million over 50 years. So you now have added millions of people to undocumented population, which are being paid lower wages, under the table, not paying taxes. It's just not a good way to have a labor force. That the labor force could lose about 400,000 skilled workers almost immediately, because remember, these are people who are currently working in the economy, paying taxes. They are citizens. They would be stripped of their citizenship. You're talking about doctors. You're talking about nurses. You're talking about general contractors. You're talking about plumbers, electricians, HVAC guys, mechanics. You're talking about lawyers, so this is very concerning that we would immediately lose all of those skilled workers. Some analysts put broader long-run GDP losses. So if he gets his way, he's talking about, they don't do it, it's going to cost us money. No, it's actually the opposite. If the Supreme Court rules in favor of Donald Trump, it could cost the GDP of the country $1 trillion. Absolutely crazy. And again, this is all fact-checked information. That flips the political talking point on its head. The better supported economic argument in the available literature is that ending or restricting birthright citizenship would cost the United States growth, workers, and tax capacity rather than save hundreds of billions of dollars. Again, Donald Trump just likes to make up workers Again, Donald Trump just likes to make up numbers in his head and just throw it out there because he knows it'll be regurgitated by the MAGA influencers, media, and his supporters. A public summary of 2026 birthright citizenship economic study said that 2/3 of past beneficiaries were working in industries that require some form of higher education. That points towards contributions far beyond low wage sector alone. So again, one of the talking points of the MAGA is that these birthright citizens, they're all working at Walmart and dishwashers and low-end labor jobs because they're uneducated and dirty and filthy and full of disease and criminals and blah, blah, blah. Actually, the statistics say the exact opposite. 2/3 of them have some form of higher education. We're talking about your nurses. We're talking about your doctors, your PAs. We're talking about your lawyers. We're talking about business people. Broader immigrant workforce data also show major foreign-born presence in education and health services, professional and business services, construction, transportation, and other sectors. And this is all the information you need right here, guys. There's just, it's so easy to fact check these blatant lies that people like Donald Trump put out today because the internet, for the most part, is free. Now, maybe you're trying to get AI to help you do it, which I do, then yeah, you might have to pay a subscription. But it's relatively cheap. You can fact check this stuff. And if you can't, just make sure you follow me because I'm going to do it for you. Industries linked to the evidence, healthcare and education, broad immigrant workforce is heavily represented in the education and health services, and a larger sector for foreign-born workers in USA facts data. Professional services, business services employ millions of immigrant workers, matching the study's claim that many beneficiaries move into higher education-dependent industries, and then obviously construction and services. Now listen, I'm a former contractor, and I can tell you right now, we have a major shortage of qualified skilled labor. We also have a major shortage of contractors, licensed contractors. And one of the reasons being is because if you keep people undocumented, they cannot become licensed. And if they cannot become licensed, they can't get the insurance. They can't perform a high quality work that they are then accountable for by building their business. So that's why you see a lot of these immigrant fly-by-nights pop up. They'll do a whole bunch of construction stuff. There might be some issues with it, but then when you try to contact them later, they're gone because they're undocumented. If they were documented, then all of a sudden they're going out, they're getting their business license, they're getting their professional license, they're getting their insurance, they're building a reputation, they're building up their Google reviews. And now, if there's a problem with the construction job, you can literally go and address it with them because they're going to want to make sure it gets fixed because they want to keep those Google reviews high because that's how they get more business. So once again, Donald Trump is just fear-mongering, scaring, but there's a more sinister reason behind it, and that's because Donald Trump is a businessman. He's a business oligarch, and he has surrounded himself with business oligarchs. And one thing that they want is cheap labor. And the best way to do that in the United States without reintroducing slavery is to have undocumented workers. Businesses, especially big contractors, I know, I worked with a bunch of them, they love undocumented workers. And if you go to any of these big construction sites, these data centers that are going to bring 10,000 jobs, which we know they're not, they're trying to call that 10,000 job stuff based off of the labor to build it. But then once it's built, then it's like 7 people run the entire thing. And then just billionaires are using it and the government is spying on us. But most of them are going to be who? It's not going to be a bunch of white or black or Asian Americans or Native Americans building them. It's going to be a bunch of Latinos, and the vast majority are going to be undocumented, which means these billionaires can jump them on their pay and not have to count them on their labor rolls, pay taxes, workers' compensation. They get to save billions of dollars doing it that way. And that's exactly why Donald Trump is trying to end birthright citizenship. He wants to create an indentured servant style economy so that the billionaires can usurp the sweat, tears, blood, and sometimes even lives of undocumented workers. It's sick, it's sinister, but Donald Trump is just the puppet. I know we like to throw all of our anger at him, and rightly so, but remember, it's his circle. If you start looking at them, these are the people that are going to these speeches at the World Economic Forum. These are the BlackRocks. These are the Larry Finks. They're the real sinister puppet masters that we really need to be digging into, looking at, and somehow bringing to justice, because they're all a bunch of crooks. I guarantee you they've broken a bunch of laws, and we just need to figure out how we can bring them to justice. If you agree with that, drop a like, comment down below if you agree. It'll help the algorithm push this out, and subscribe for more. I'll see you guys in the next Daily Rumble update.